July 2, 1937. The sun had barely broken the horizon over New Guinea, when Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, prepared for what was meant to be one of the final legs of their historic circumnavigation. Howland Island, a tiny speck in the vast Pacific Ocean. The world was watching. Radio stations across the globe buzzed with updates. Newspapers printed hourly bulletins. Amelia Earhart wasn't just a pilot, she was a symbol of daring courage, a woman who defied gravity, gender roles, and expectations. But then, she vanished. What if she didn't just disappear? What if she was silenced? Amelia Earhart has not been heard from since her last transmission at 8:43 a.m. Her last known position was somewhere near Howland Island. Search and rescue efforts are underway. But behind those dry, calculated reports, something else was unfolding. Unreleased government notes from that same morning reveal a hidden radio frequency transmission, one that was never made public. The message was faint, distorted, nearly swallowed by static. But the words were chilling. "They're coming for me." Seconds later, radio silence. The official reports didn't mention this. It was redacted, still buried in military archives. And for decades, no one asked the right questions. Until now. To understand what really happened that day, we must rewind the clock, back to Amelia's final days on land. Multiple witnesses, including technicians at the airstrip, reported something odd about her demeanor. She was nervous, jittery. Unlike the calm, calculated aviator the world had come to know. Mechanics noted that Amelia demanded the Lockheed Electra be checked multiple times, even though the plane had been recently serviced. And then there was the matter of the sealed envelope. One of the ground crew, whose journal was discovered decades later, wrote about a strange letter Amelia handed to him before takeoff. She said only, "If I don't make it, give this to the press." The envelope disappeared. So did the ground crew member, shortly after returning home. He died in a mysterious fire a month later. His journal was found years later in an antique chest sold at auction. It was the first clue. The first thread in a long line of suppressed truths. Voice of interviewed historian. Earhart was more than a pilot. She had deep connections with military officials and politicians. She wasn't just flying a plane, she was flying near territories embroiled in tension. There are layers to this story that the public was never allowed to see. What made that final flight different? Why would Amelia, who had logged over 7,000 flight miles, suddenly falter? Why would her last words be a whispered plea? "They're coming for me?" And why was that radio transmission scrubbed from official logs? We spoke to a retired Navy cryptographer who once worked in Pacific surveillance operations. He confirmed that frequencies in use during the 1930s were routinely intercepted by military intelligence. If such a message had been caught on the wire, it wouldn't have gone unnoticed. It would have been erased. Cut to audio reconstruction. Simulated static. "This is Amelia. Amelia Earhart. Do you read me?" Long pause. "Not safe. Not safe. They're coming for me." The U.S. government spent over $4 million on the search, an astronomical figure for its time. Yet no trace of Amelia or Fred was ever found. No wreckage. No body. No explanation. Except for a single pair of radio logs, quietly filed away under a top-secret clearance code. What's more shocking? Those logs weren't discovered by a historian. They were leaked by a hobbyist radio operator. In 1996, amateur ham radio enthusiast William Dorn uncovered a forgotten broadcast tape while digitizing old transmissions. The signal, nearly indecipherable, had a timestamp that aligned with Amelia's last known location. After months of cleaning and decoding, he swore he heard a voice. A woman's voice. Her voice. And not just a call for help, but a warning. "Something's not right," William had said in a radio interview. She wasn't just lost, she was running. From who, or what, I still don't know. Weeks after his story went public, William vanished. His body was never found. The deeper we dig, the more buried pieces begin to resurface. One thing is becoming painfully clear. Amelia's disappearance was no accident. Someone wanted her story rewritten. Her voice silenced. Her name remembered only in textbooks and trivia, not in questions and controversy. But there's one detail almost everyone missed. A hidden entry in her personal flight log, never published, mentions a suspicious meeting she had 2 weeks before her final flight. "Met with L. Harding today." Strange questions. Something about a signal test near Howland. Felt uneasy. Who was L. Harding? Why was he interested in signals near Howland? And what kind of test could make one of the world's bravest women afraid? Hours after Amelia's last flight, a naval aircraft flying off-course radioed a brief, urgent message to Base Command. Unidentified plane seen descending near Marshall Islands. Intercepted faint distress call, female voice. Coordinates logged before signal vanished. Those coordinates were never released to the public. Until now. It had been decades since Amelia Earhart's final flight. Her name had become legend, a symbol of courage, of mystery, of a dream lost to the Pacific. But legends leave footprints. And sometimes, the truth hides in plain sight. In 2003, inside a small, forgotten archive room at a university library in Massachusetts, a dusty metal cabinet was wheeled out during renovations. Inside were hundreds of folders, some yellowed with age, others marked miscellaneous. 1930s aviation. Among them was a sealed envelope. It was addressed simply, "To whom it may concern, in case of my death." Signed, A. That discovery set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. The envelope found its way into the hands of local journalist Clara Voss, who had been quietly researching Amelia's life for a decade, ever since she'd found a cryptic quote in her grandmother's diary. She knew too much. They told her to stay quiet. Clara's grandmother, it turned out, had worked in military radio during World War II. But she had never mentioned any connection to Earhart. Until now. Clara reads the letter aloud for the first time. "If you're reading this, I am either dead, or have vanished. I've flown into something I wasn't supposed to see. Not a storm, not weather. Something man-made. There are eyes in the sky and secrets in the sea. They warned me. But I couldn't stay silent. They called it Project Epsilon. I saw documents. I wasn't meant to. If I disappear, know this, it wasn't an accident." Project Epsilon? No record of such a project existed in public databases or declassified files. But Clara wasn't ready to give up. She began tracing Amelia's contacts, digging through old telegrams, letters, journals, anything she could find. Then she found him. Frank Talbot, a retired naval technician who had worked radar in the Pacific during the late 1930s. When Clara contacted him, he was reluctant to speak. But something about the letter shook him. He finally agreed to meet. "Clara, Mr. Talbot, have you ever heard of Project Epsilon?" Frank hesitates. That name, it was never supposed to be public. "God help me. You don't know what you're digging into." "Clara, Amelia mentioned it in a letter before she disappeared." "What was it?" "Frank, a test. Top secret. Experimental radar, but not just that. There were rumors. Radio disruption. Cloaking tech. Stuff you wouldn't believe. They were flying test aircraft near Howland Island that week. We weren't supposed to know." "Clara, did Amelia see something she wasn't supposed to?" "Frank, I think she flew too close. Heard too much. Maybe she tried to warn people." Clara's instincts told her she was onto something. She filed a request for declassified files under the Freedom of Information Act, targeting keywords like radar test, Epsilon, and Howland 1937. Weeks later, a thin envelope arrived. Most of the documents were heavily redacted, names blacked out, details blurred. But one sentence stood out. Subject cited unauthorized aircraft, possibly civilian. Proceeded with communications lockdown protocol. Interference logged at 3:41. 3:41. That matched the exact time Amelia's radio signal was last picked up. Clara cross-referenced the coordinates from that military record with old naval route maps. What she found was chilling. A secret naval test site had been operating just 150 miles north of Howland during that same week. It was never disclosed in any official search report. Even stranger, that site had been abandoned immediately after Amelia's disappearance. No explanation. No follow-up. Just gone. As Clara's investigation continued, something odd began to happen. She noticed her emails were being flagged. Her laptop restarted itself, twice, without warning. Then late one night she heard a knock at her door. No one was there. But a small envelope had been slid beneath the door. Inside was a single sentence, typed in bold, block letters. "Stop asking questions about Project Epsilon. No return address. No name. Just a threat." Was it just a hoax? A cruel joke? Or was someone really watching? Clara pressed on, now more determined than ever. She went back to Amelia's flight log, specifically her final entries before leaving La. There, almost invisible in the margins, was a strange drawing. A triangle inside a circle with the letters DM written underneath. She'd seen that symbol before. In an unrelated declassified file from 1946, a file referencing deep mantle operations, an experimental aircraft surveillance unit stationed in the Pacific. Could DM have meant deep mantle? Could Amelia have stumbled into a covert airspace? Clara digs deeper into the deep mantle files and finds a blurry photo of a radar tower labeled E Station 9, with a handwritten note. Last seen July 2nd. Woman in leather flight gear. Escorted inside. Below it, a final chilling phrase. No contact. Contains story. Earhart is now classified. Could Amelia Earhart have survived the crash? Was she taken? And if so, why was she never allowed to come home? Clara Voss knew she was in too deep. But after discovering the chilling mention of Amelia being escorted inside a facility marked E Station 9, there was no turning back. Every instinct told her this wasn't just about one woman's disappearance. This was about a cover-up, bigger than anything she had imagined. Stacks of documents now covered Clara's living room. Flight logs, declassified military files, old news clippings, all connected by threads of string on her investigation board. She kept returning to one photo, a blurry shot from 1937 showing a woman in aviator gear surrounded by uniformed men outside a fenced facility. The photo was labeled with just one code, DM. Her heart raced every time she looked at it. This wasn't speculation anymore. Amelia may have been alive, at least for a while. Clara decided to go off-grid. She moved her research to a remote cabin her father once owned. No Wi-Fi. No cell service. Just her laptop, and the truth she was trying to unearth. She began looking into names that kept appearing in adjacent records. Former military officers, radar technicians, intelligence officers, all of whom had either disappeared mysteriously or died in accidents shortly after 1937. One name stood out. Commander Eli Harrow. A top-level strategist in Pacific operations. And, more importantly, one of the last people known to have been stationed near Howland Island in the summer of 1937. Clara started looking for any trace of him. To Clara's surprise, Harrow was still alive. Nearly 99 years old. Frail. Confined to a wheelchair. But when Clara introduced herself and mentioned Amelia, he tensed, his fingers gripping the armrest tightly. Clara, I'm trying to understand what really happened. Harrow whispers, you shouldn't be here. Clara, did you see her? Harrow, I heard her. Over the radio. She was scared. Clara, what was she scared of? Harrow, not the ocean. Not the flight. She was scared of us. Clara leaned in as Harrow continued. Harrow, she saw something she wasn't supposed to. Some kind of prototype. We weren't even sure it worked yet. It bent light, scrambled radio. She flew into the zone by mistake. Clara, what happened to her? Harrow, there was a meeting. High up. They didn't want the press getting hold of it. Said her celebrity would draw too much heat. Clara, so you silenced her? Harrow, not me. I was a soldier. I followed orders. But yes, she was taken. That moment shattered everything Clara thought she knew. Amelia Earhart hadn't crashed. She hadn't drowned. She had been captured by her own government. But why? What had she flown over? What did she hear? Back at her cabin, Clara revisited the Project Epsilon notes. She noticed a pattern in the coordinates, flight paths crossing near an uncharted Pacific atoll labeled only as Point Obscura. She entered the data into a flight simulation program, and the path aligned exactly with Amelia's last known trajectory. That atoll didn't exist on any commercial map, but it appeared on 3 different declassified military flight plans from 1937 to 1939, hidden in plain sight. Then came the real twist. Clara found a journal belonging to Amelia's mechanic, Fred Noonan, pages long thought to be lost. Inside, one haunting entry dated June 28, 1937. AE said she doesn't trust the military observers. Too many experiments, too many secrets. She says they want her to take a specific route, not for navigation, but to test something. Said she saw strange lights last night. Radio isn't right. Feels like we're being tracked. Another entry, dated just 2 days before they vanished. She said if we disappear, someone needs to know, it wasn't an accident. Clara realizes the truth is larger than she feared. Amelia's entire final flight route may have been orchestrated, not by navigational need, but to lure her into a zone of experimental activity. She had unknowingly become part of a test. And when she got too close to the truth, they couldn't let her leave. But who gave those orders? Who had the power to erase a national hero? And why go through all this trouble? As Clara connects the final dots, one government memo, heavily redacted, stands out. Civilian pilot has witnessed operations connected to Horizon Black and Epsilon. Recommend containment. Subject has high public profile. Suggests staged disappearance. The final page of the memo was stamped with a red directive. 4 eyes only Majestic 12. Clara's hands trembled. She had heard the term before. Majestic 12, a rumored secret committee formed to oversee black operations and advanced technology. Dismissed as conspiracy theory by most. But now, it was beginning to make too much sense. Could Amelia Earhart's disappearance have been the first in a long string of secret suppressions? And if so, how far would they go to keep it buried? Clara Voss didn't sleep that night. The name, Majestic 12, looped in her head like a warning. A whisper in the shadows of history. A phantom that conspiracy theorists had chased for decades, and now she had a tangible connection. If what she had found was real, Amelia Earhart's disappearance wasn't an accident. It was an execution of silence. Rain lashed against the windows as Clara sifted through more documents she had digitized. Most of the files she uncovered referenced Horizon Black, Epsilon, and now, Project Obscura. Each seemed to revolve around experimental technology, invisible airfields, sound-masking weapons, and something called aerial cloaking. The keywords kept recurring in Earhart's flight region. But it was one redacted document that chilled Clara most. It listed civilian interference incidents. Amelia's name was on the top of the list. But she wasn't the only one. Clara's research now took a new turn, toward others who had vanished mysteriously in aviation history. Names the public had long forgotten. She found 4 cases between 1934 and 1942, private pilots, amateur aviators, even a military lieutenant. All reported strange radio malfunctions and vanishing aircrafts. Each disappeared near classified coordinates, just like Amelia. They were all linked to the same operational files. And each time, Majestic 12 was copied on internal memos. She stared at the screen. This wasn't a theory anymore. This was a pattern. Project Obscura was never about navigation. It was about control. Airspace dominance. They used radio interference as a mask, but it was something else. Clara, what do you mean? They tested things on unsuspecting pilots. Most couldn't report back. Amelia had a voice the world would listen to. That made her dangerous. The anonymous analyst confirmed it. Amelia flew into a test zone without realizing it. A prototype of cloaking technology had been activated, something that could alter perception and sound. She thought she was flying toward Howland Island. But she was never meant to reach it. Clara accessed a retired pilot's archived logbook. Inside was a map showing a concealed facility buried on a remote atoll, codenamed Obscura Station. Satellite images showed no landmass in that location. But older Navy maps, digitized from microfilm, marked it clearly. Clara cross-checked the logbook entries with Amelia's final transmission coordinates. The dots aligned. Amelia didn't vanish over open sea. She was redirected. Intentionally. A final log entry from the facility read: Contact made. Civilian pilot detained. Subject remains uncooperative. Further decisions pending from Directive Council. July 3, 1937. The same day Amelia vanished. Through Clara's eyes and discovered writings, a reconstructed version of Amelia's final hours takes shape. We see Amelia flying, struggling with faulty radio transmissions. We hear her fear. This isn't working. Something's wrong. I can't see the island. Fred, the instruments are wrong, they're pulling us off course. Then silence. Her last message crackles through. They're coming for me. Clara's hands trembled as she played the final piece of evidence. A recovered Morse code translation believed to have been sent from Amelia's emergency radio shortly after her plane disappeared from radar. Alive, not crash, being held. Clara, exhausted but determined, holds a press conference. She presents her findings. The letter from Amelia. The interview with Harrow. The Project Obscura files. The Morse code. She expects disbelief. But something worse happens. Silence. The news doesn't spread. Her footage is removed from multiple platforms. Her sources begin going dark. Her email gets locked out. Her devices glitch. She receives a final anonymous message. You're asking the right questions. That's what makes you dangerous. Then, nothing. That night, Clara hears a knock at her cabin door. 3 loud knocks. No one is supposed to know she's there. She reaches for her recorder, clicks it on, and whispers into it. If something happens to me. Amelia wasn't the end. She was the beginning. The screen fades to black. A text appears. Classified files linked to Majestic 12 remain sealed to this day. It's been weeks since Clara Voss uncovered the chilling truth behind Amelia Earhart's disappearance. But now she's being silenced. Her investigations have led her to the edge of an explosive revelation, one that no one wants to be uncovered. But Clara knows that the truth must come out. Clara sits alone, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The cabin feels smaller, suffocating. Every creak in the floorboards echoes like a warning. Her phone buzzes. It's a text message from an unknown number. You've gone too far. Drop it now, or the consequences will be irreversible. She stares at the screen for a long moment before typing back. What consequences? There's no reply. Clara knows that what she's uncovered has touched something far darker, far more powerful than she anticipated. But there's no turning back now. As Clara digs deeper into the final pieces of evidence, something unexpected happens. A new document emerges, a file marked Project Obscura, Amelia Earhart, Classified Findings. It's buried deep in the archives of a private organization, one that has been quietly monitoring her every move. It's a risky play to access the file, but Clara knows this is her last chance. She opens the document. Her eyes widen as she reads the first line. Amelia Earhart's disappearance was orchestrated by a covert faction within the U.S. government. Her heart races. But the words that follow freeze her in place. The decision was made in order to prevent the discovery of Project Obscura, a top-secret military technology that could change the course of warfare. We transitioned to rare grainy footage from 1937, hidden film of the Horizon Black tests. Amelia's flight path wasn't just an accident. It was the test zone for a new type of aircraft cloaking technology, one that made radar tracking impossible. As the footage plays, a familiar name appears in the credits, Director J. H. Maxwell. Clara's pulse quickens. Maxwell is a name she's seen before in the government files. A key figure in Majestic 12. The shocking truth becomes clear. Amelia Earhart wasn't merely a victim of a tragic accident. She was eliminated because she got too close to a secret that could have changed history. Amelia had uncovered the military's experimental weapon, a cloaking device that rendered aircraft invisible to radar. The government couldn't let her go public with that information, and so they chose to silence her. The experimental plane she was flying wasn't lost. It was never meant to return. With the evidence in hand, Clara confronts a former government insider, a high-ranking officer who worked directly with Maxwell. Clara records the interview. Clara, what was the real reason Amelia was killed? The officer's voice cracks, but he doesn't hesitate. Amelia had uncovered Project Obscura. It wasn't just a technology. It was an experiment in control. The government had no choice but to eliminate her. She was too close to revealing the truth. The officer's confession sends shockwaves through Clara's entire investigation. But with this revelation comes a final, chilling piece of the puzzle. Project Obscura wasn't the only secret being hidden. Amelia Earhart wasn't the first to fall victim to this conspiracy. Clara's findings reveal that several other civilians, aviators and pilots, had mysteriously disappeared during similar test flights. They were the guinea pigs in a covert operation aimed at creating an invisible fleet of aircraft. But that wasn't the worst part. As Clara prepares to release the full report, a knock at the door interrupts her. It's been hours since her last message, hours since the text warning. She opens the door to find an envelope left on her doorstep. Inside is a single note. This ends now. You don't know what you're dealing with. Clara takes a deep breath. She has no intention of backing down. She uploads the full report, sending it out to multiple news outlets, independent journalists, and archives. The truth is finally out there. But as Clara presses send, a new message pops up on her phone. You're in danger. Stop now. The lights flicker. The world would never look at Amelia Earhart's disappearance the same way again. Clara's efforts to expose the truth had risked everything. But her courage changed the narrative, shifting public perception about the aviator's fate. The authorities would attempt to erase every trace of Clara's work. The public would be left questioning everything they thought they knew about the vanished legend. But for Clara, the truth wasn't just about Amelia anymore. It was about uncovering the deep web of corruption, the lengths to which those in power would go to protect their darkest secrets. As Clara watches the footage of her investigation unfold on screen, she receives a final text message. This time it's not from an anonymous number. It's from her own mother. They've been watching you for years. It's time to stop, before it's too late. The final words of Clara's report flash on the screen. Amelia Earhart wasn't just a victim of a missing plane. She was a victim of a much larger conspiracy. And she was not the only one. If you found this story unsettling, you're not alone. The truth behind Amelia Earhart's disappearance and the government's dark secret continues to haunt us all. Stay tuned as we continue to uncover hidden truths and shocking conspiracies. If you want more incredible investigations like this, make sure you're subscribed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories that dive into the deepest mysteries of history.